Hello, everyone. I think we basically have the magic 49. Yeah. So, good afternoon, good morning, good evening from wherever you are. My name is Richard Muko. I work as, do you think we should, yeah, okay. I work as an implementation advocacy implementation manager for AVAC. And we are really happy that all of you were able to make it to this webinar. So the objective of this webinar is to mobilize the African civil society for a 5-year clean reauthorization of PEPFAR. The objectives are to educate all of us about PEPFAR reauthorization, to find ways of how together we can influence a fresh 5-year reauthorization, and then to invite a sign-on onto a letter addressed to the US Senate and Congress requesting for bipartisan support for a 5-year PEPFAR reauthorization. We have great speakers in our midst, all who have had an amazing experience with PEPFAR, both in the US and in Africa. So we basically have Lawrence Khonyongwa. Lawrence Khonyongwa is the Executive Director of Malawi Network of People Living with HIV. And then we have Joan Chamungu. Joan Chamungu is the Executive Director of Tanzanian Network of Women Living with HIV. And then we have Annette Gaudino. Annette Gaudino is a Senior Policy Advisor for AVAC. And then with a long time experience with PEPFAR in the US. And then we also have Cyprian Komba. I don't know, he had some problems since morning because he has been in places where there's no network, who is basically who works with the young people living with HIV in Africa and also in Tanzania. So the outline of our discussion today, we basically begin with Annette, who will basically be talking about the current state of affairs in the reauthorization process of PEPFAR. And then the second is Joan Chamungu, who will basically talk about PEPFAR and life affirmation for the PLHIV in Africa. And then we have Lawrence Khonyongwa, who will be calling for bipartisan PEPFAR.
The social health insurance.
Yes. And then we have Tumaini Mbibo, who will basically be moving us to a call for action. And of course, this will be, he will basically explain a bit about a letter that we would like exactly to send to the PEPFAR Senate and the PEPFAR Congress. And of course, in order to call for a bipartisan support for PEPFAR reauthorization. And then of course, Cyprian Komba will be discussing about continuous strategies for PEPFAR engagement. In case Cyprian will not be able to join us, then Joan will take his position. So we shall now proceed to listen to these amazing people, beginning with Annette. Welcome, Annette. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Muko. One moment. Oops. So I'm going to give you an overview of where the PEPFAR reauthorization stands currently in the US Congress and in the US government. So as you know, PEPFAR reauthorization has become politicized and is currently stalled in the Congress. This is due to several related factors. The first is the lifting of the Mexico City policy, also known as the Global Gag Rule, by President Biden. The Global Gag Rule bans US funding to any organization that provides or promotes abortion services, even if that funding is received from other sources. Since the first implementation of the Global Gag Rule by Republican President Ronald Reagan in 1985, every Democratic president has rescinded the rule and every Republican president has put it back in place. Under President Trump, for the first time, the Global Gag Rule also applied to PEPFAR. Now, the overturning of abortion rights by the Supreme Court of the United States has given US anti-abortion forces confidence to push for more severe abortion restrictions and to target Democratic President Biden for his support for abortion rights and for LGBTQ rights. So in May of this year, the Heritage Foundation, which is a right-wing conservative think tank, published a broad attack on PEPFAR. claiming that the president was using the program as a vehicle for what they called a radical pro-abortion, pro-LGBTQ agenda. This was supposedly based on sexual reproductive health and rights and key populations language in the most recent PEPFAR strategy. However, this language had also been existing under the previous administration. So outside, unelected anti-abortion groups have seized on these false accusations to demand that the global gag rule be made permanent as part of any reauthorization process. And further, they are threatening to score any vote taken on PEPFAR reauthorization if it does not include this change. That would threaten the re-election prospects of Republican congressional members, particularly in the House, which is the lower chamber, which faces elections next November. These lobbying groups are very committed to their position, and although advocates have been meeting with them and trying to come to a compromise, they do not seem persuadable and are not backing down from their stance. As part of the budget process in the US, the House, the lower chamber, passed a one-year reauthorization that does include this permanent global gag rule. This provision, this legislation is dead on arrival and will not be accepted by the US Senate, which is controlled by Democrats, and by the president. Now, bipartisan support for the program remains solid in the Senate, which is the upper chamber. However, Republican senators have been reluctant to publicly show their support for a clean 5-year reauthorization by sponsoring the introduction of a standalone bill. This bill would create language in contrast to what the House passed and would serve as an important marker for reconciliation, which is the process of negotiation and coming to agreement between the upper and lower chambers on a final budget. There is no support in the Senate, again, for making the global gag rule permanent. US advocates remain united behind a clean 5-year reauthorization and in rejecting any shorter reauthorizations, as this would undermine the US commitment to PEPFAR and further politicize the program. So the path forward is the attachment of a clean 5-year reauthorization to a larger spending bill known as an omnibus. Now, just recently, the US government funding has been extended into the new year at current levels. PEPFAR is included in a tranche of funding known as the Senate Foreign Operations and Programs, known as SFOPs, with a new deadline of February 2nd. So funding continues unchanged at least until February 2nd. Furthermore, the program itself is a permanent part of the permanent US law. It would take an act of Congress in order to end the program. And because of the way US funding cycle work, money has already been appropriated for the program through Q3, through the fall of 2024. However, the Congress continues to control those funding levels and the release of those funds to recipient countries. But the money is in the pipeline, at least through next year. And the program would continue to be funded next year, even without reauthorization. But reauthorization is essential to long-term planning and to reaffirming the commitment. So also, one more thing, the ongoing war in Ukraine and the war in Gaza also complicate the funding picture going forward. So I'm happy to answer any questions in the chat, and thank you for your time. Back to you, Muko.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Annette, for that. We'll now proceed to Joan, who will share with us about, the amazing experience, her amazing experience with PEPFAR. Joan, please come in. Hello, Joan. Can you hear us? Unmute if you can hear us.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now. Welcome.
Okay, thank you, Muko, and the entire people. PEPFAR means a lot to people living with HIV in Africa. I, as a mother and a grandmother, I'm an African woman who is living with
Annette,
HIV for more than 22 years.
Yes, yes. Okay.
Okay, I'm grateful to PEPFAR for being instrumental in saving millions of lives in Africa by providing critical support in HIV response. I'm looking on the number of years which I've been living with HIV, and I'm also looking on the life of PEPFAR, which came in Africa. PEPFAR funding has totaled more than $110 billion since it's launched by President George Bush in 2003. And much of this investment was made in Africa with great positive result on the lives of many people. Previously, we were living with hope, but now there is a life. We who will live with HIV, today we have no fear anymore. And some of us, despite of our HIV status, we have lived on to see our children becoming adults and bearing us grandchildren. And we also have many amusing stories of HIV mothers who give birth to negative babies and of positive babies living on to become adults and living their full lives. And we know that HIV now is more than 30 years. So we already have young people born by HIV and they live with HIV, and now they have families. So when we are talking about 20 years of strong life affirmation, more than 25 million lives have been saved. The days of gloom experienced in late 90s and early 2000s are now a thing of past. Actually, it is just a history, thanks to PEPFAR. Now, when we are looking on our countries, the helplessness of our countries to handle a great crisis never seen before was glued. And the loss of the young men and the women is no longer there. We have all reason to thank PEPFAR. Now, when we look on our health system, they are becoming better. At the moment, there is a great procurement capabilities. We have better and effective human resources for health. And on structure-wise, the barriers are lessening with each passing day. At least they are becoming stronger. Now, there is a need to sustaining the gains, all that I've talked about. So, under PEPFAR support, ARV has remained the single most effective mode of reducing the number of new HIV infections. I'm also speaking here because I've been on medication since 2009, and I'm stronger and energetic because of the PEPFAR program. So people living with HIV in Africa impact that US will continue this life-saving leadership that will eventually end the pandemic. So there is a need to sustain the gain. Over to you, Muko. Muko, are you there?
Muko, unmute.
Yes. Oh, thank you.
Over to you.
So, yeah, thank you very much, Joan. That was a really powerful testimony, and we can be able to see, I mean, many of us have beautiful stories to talk about PEPFAR. And of course, it's basically a life-sustaining and life-saving program that is really is needed, especially in Africa. So let's move on to the next slide. Yeah, so I will call Lawrence Khonyongwa to take us through this particular part, calling for bipartisan support for PEPFAR reauthorization. Welcome, Lawrence.
Thank you very much, Muko, and everybody, welcome. To continue from where Joan has said, it's a very moving testimony. The civil society in Africa are here to affirm that this has been a life-saving program like no other. PEPFAR is a magic that came at the right time. We call upon the Congress and the Senate to put away their differences to set aside their differences so that we are able to have a clean 5 years reauthorization, because this will ensure that there is proper planning, proper forecasting. For every planner, I think 5 years is better than having uncertainty. So at this point in time, we take a note that there is great leadership in the American democracy. America has demonstrated through this program about the power of standing together with those that face immense difficulties. We have seen in the past how the American democracy has worked to look at the bipartisan support, or the two sides of the aisle coming together for the good of the population. So we have seen that leadership before. It has been great leadership in fighting a pandemic at all times. The support that has been given to PEPFAR all these years has been immense. Millions of lives have been saved, as Joan has said, with the support that has been provided by the US government. As you are aware that the US government is the largest contributor to the Global Fund to fight AIDS, TB, and malaria, the pledges that the US government has made have been fulfilled. They make a pledge and they pay their contribution. This has also been as a result of the PEPFAR program. So we are saying that PEPFAR is a great model of decolonization. PEPFAR does not impose. PEPFAR teams with country teams to develop priorities, and nothing is imposed. So there is country ownership within the PEPFAR model, and that has been very important in ensuring that the priorities that are put in the program are country-owned and can be sustained. What we are saying is that this is a matter of life and death. Non-reauthorization of PEPFAR will pose a very big threat and will have very deleterious effect on the HIV and AIDS gains that have been achieved so far. We are also saying that the PEPFAR program is unique. Is unique in the sense that it has contributed to high quality programming and innovation in HIV and AIDS. If you remember, the support to orphans and vulnerable children living with HIV, or those whose parents died due to HIV and AIDS, this has been so unique. I don't think there is any other agency around the globe that has done more to orphans and vulnerable children than PEPFAR has. So, as Joan said, some of these children are leaders now. Not only that, they have children that are grandchildren of the likes of myself and Joan, but that these children are now leaders. And they are standing in international conferences, saying their lived experiences. So all this because of PEPFAR. So we are calling on the Senate as well as Congress to come together for the good of the entire population. Over to you, Muko.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lawrence. Take us to the next slide. Yeah, as you can be able to see what Lawrence has alluded to, there's quite a lot of the voices, not only of the CSOs, but also of our own country governments on the way PEPFAR is managed in our countries. So You can be able to see here the people's corps from the various countries, which basically have been the voices of CSOs in contributing to this. And of course, yes, we need PEPFAR to continue its life-saving, sustaining work, and to maintain the global leadership in the fight against HIV, AIDS, and other pandemics. So I invite my friend Tumaini Mbibo, the Executive Director of EANNASO, to continue to take us through to the next slides. Welcome, Tumaini. Tumaini, if you're there, you're muted. Kindly welcome. Unmute. Can you hear us,
Yes.
Tumaini?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Richard. Thank you all for joining the call. It's important that we have been able to bring all of you here, though our fellows who signed in are not here, but we expect that at the end of the day, this message will reach them and our mission will go ahead. As far as the mission is concerned, now we are going to call for action, and we have prepared a letter, and this letter will be shared among us through the links, and it has been designed with the assistance of AVAC, Compass, and EANNASO, and also Youth Negative, the NPY. To request for a clear 5 years PEPFAR reauthorization, as has been described by Annette. This letter has been addressed to U.S. Senate and Congress, just requesting for a bipartisan support for a 5 years clean reauthorization of PEPFAR. And here you can see that there is links that have been set for you to get in and read the letter, and later on go to the other section and sign in. In the signing in, you will see that it requires you to provide some organization details, and you have to give us the location, the country, and the city that you are, and accept or deny whether you have to be consulted or otherwise. So this will be communicated. We as a EANNASO, we are on top of the communication. Then later on, the same way as this communication came to you, will come to you for the purpose, so that you will get to get into the link and access the letter and the sign on. You are all requested to sign on to the letter and to encourage your networks to sign into as well. As I have said that, we have reached far with the many people, with the signing of more than 200 expected participants. As you can see, as of now, we are 75, but from here, we have to reach our networks and our partners so that we can encourage them to sign. After reading the letter, I hope they will be in a position to understand what it's all about. The U.S. Congress and Senate need to hear the voice of all of us from beneficiary countries. They need to hear our voices, because we don't have representatives in Senate and Congress, but we have the technology and the voice, to air out for them to hear. So it is our time to do what we are supposed to do so that PEPFAR can continue, as my colleague has already explained. Next slide. Next slide. Yes.
Go back.
Okay. Accordingly, looking at the letter, it expresses concern on the failure of Congress and Senate to arrive at a 5-year clean reauthorization of PEPFAR. It goes on to show how PEPFAR has been beneficial to the African communities. That much we have heard from Lawrence and Joan, but we have to reiterate what they have been said formally. It demonstrates how PEPFAR is unique both in approach and mission, a great model of decolonization, as has been clearly provided by Lawrence. Some statistical picture is provided by the letter to demonstrate the transformation power of PEPFAR, and the letter ends by demonstrating that American leadership is still needed in fighting the HIV pandemic, and its absence will be left as a great loss. So that is all about what we are going to do. From the letter perspective, it is for us to call for action so that as much and many as we can to sign the letter for the purpose. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you so much, Tumaini. Kindly, next slide. So we will invite, I don't know if Cyprian has been able to join. Hello? I think he really had problems since yesterday with his network. So Joan, kindly take us through.
Okay, thank you. So we need for continuous engagement strategy for PEPFAR. We have to send letters to American embassies, and we may need to learn from GIFAN Africa. When we were advocating for replacement of 6th and 7th Global Fund, we used it to write a letter and send to the embassies. And to some other extent, we even take the flowers with us and send to the embassies, and it worked. And we think that this, back again, and we think that this approach also can also work. So the GFund campaign has assisted to push up the Global Fund pledges, as I said earlier, with each pledging year. And this is the approach also we are going to engage. And we're also going to create a critical mass of civil society organizations around this campaign and ensure that they develop some positive messages for PEPFAR centered around real life change stories of people that are as a result of PEPFAR. So even even as I'm reading for you, we are discussing, I'm also a beneficiary, and I have, my life has depended on what PEPFAR has done in Africa. So we need for continuous engagement with the members of US Senate and the Congress as the African civil societies. And we can now tweet, sending the letter out, endorsing, putting our signature. We can use YouTube, videos, emails, and any other means which can send the message to them. You know that we are not part of the Senate and we are not part of the Congress. So through the social media, this message will go around, and it will be easy for them to read and to take action on what we are telling them. Next. So the call to action, kindly you have seen the presentation has a letter which is requesting the US Senate and the Congress to recommit for a 5 years clean reauthorization of PEPFAR. So all of us, please, and our friends and whoever you can meet, the civil society organization, the community-based organization, let us sign on the letter so that a great number of signatures can change and can make them to act on it. Thank you very much for taking your action to sign, and please make sure that you sign, and then you invite others to sign so that we can have a good number of signatures. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Joan. Thank you so much, Tumaini. Thank you so much, Lawrence, and thank you again, Annette. Those were really powerful voices, you know. showing us the need for us to organize and mobilize ourselves for a 5 years clean reauthorization of PEPFAR. So we'll go straight away to questions. We'll go straight away to any other comments. We'll start with Ramon. Kindly raise your hands and also send any comments that you may have on the chat. We'll basically address them. Welcome, Ramon. Ramon, kindly unmute. Hello, Ramon. Can you hear us? Okay, any comments? Yes, please.
Hello?
Yes. Oh, okay. Ramon.
Hello?
Ramon, yes. Kindly come in.
Hello. Okay, yeah. Hello. So good afternoon, everyone. So actually, I'm calling from Nigeria. So my name is
Yes.
I'm the National Coordinator for Youth Network in Nigeria. So actually, I want to commend EANNASO and the other partners that actually put this together. So it's a very commendable movement that we would like to be part of it. Then my organization would like to be part of this movement. So having said this, so I also want to take this opportunity to say this is that we know that our brothers from Eastern Africa are doing a lot around making people to know that the Africans to project this integrity of civil society organization in Africa. But I'm thinking that there's a need for us to also collaborate more with people, with other CSOs organizations beyond Eastern Africa. For instance, the Western Africans. So let us see the way that there will be more synergy among us. Looking at all the organizations that actually put this together. So they are more from Malawi, Kenya, and all of that. So far, EANNASO is doing very well. But I want to use this opportunity to call the new executive director of EANNASO to see how we can partner more. Like for us as a youth network, we are ready to work with you guys in other parts of Africa. So we have the capacity, we have everything that it takes to make the partnership to be win-win kind of. So that's just my own contribution. So we can continue. So I will sign the letter on behalf of youth of Nigeria, so to show our solidarity to this movement. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ramon. Would you like to take that?
Hello?
How, there is a feeling that, of course, West Africa is calling EANNASO. Tumaini, are you there? Can you hear us? Okay. All right, let's go to the next one. Of course, it is still okay. Solo, please come in.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. This is Solo from KP Consortium of Kenya. So 2 questions. One is the letter. What are we looking at, especially either the names or the logos for the letter? So the timelines. And then the second one is, will there be time for a reviewing of the letter as well? Thanks.
Solo, would you like to take that, Annette?
Yes, thank you. I put the links to the letter in the chat. We will definitely send it out to folks. Basically, everyone who registered, we can send it out to make sure that you have time to review it. In terms of the timing, we have some time to gather signatures, at least a week, if not a little bit longer. We would like to gather the signatures and deliver the letter before the holiday. But because the Congress essentially extended the current funding until February 2nd, we don't have to do this, tomorrow. We have some time to give folks a chance to review the letter and to see the letter. I also could try to share it on my screen. If folks would like to do that, I'm happy to do that as well. Yeah, I'm seeing some people having issues with the link. It's possible you may need a Google account, and that's the problem. So if it's okay with others, I can pull up the letter and try to share it while we continue to take questions. Is that okay?
Yeah. Maybe to add on the same, Richard.
Yes, go ahead, Tumaini.
Yeah, as I have already, pointed out during my presentation, is that we at EANNASO, as a regional hub, we are going to share the same way we have shared the invitation, so that we reach out for those who are within our reach. So we share the letter and the option for signing. Then whenever they do, we'll capture what is done. And as Annette has pointed out, that due to technological challenges, the request can be sent to all of us, so that we can share in a different mode, like emailing the same and the link for signing. Thank you.
Thank you. Tumaini, before you go, there was also a question from Ramon, who asked, yes, it seems that EANNASO is biased to Eastern Africa. What are your plans to going to West Africa?
Yeah. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. So in actual fact, EANNASO is not biased to East Africa, but it depends on the timing and the level of support that we are getting. And we have been going beyond East Africa, reaching the Anglophone Africa, and also cutting across to Russophone, and even supporting the Francophone. So we have been to Nigeria, to Senegal, Gambia, and so forth. So we have been to, as we speak now, our consultants are in Namibia, Botswana, and Eswatini, working on the same. And we have many other engagement with Ethiopia. And recently we had a touch base with an organization in Egypt. So we are all over. We are not biased to East Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Maybe before Ramon, you come in, I will request that Annette reads for us the letter, because someone has requested that. And then so that we basically all have a feel of what is contained in the letter. Kindly, Annette.
Thank you, Muko. So as civil society organizations from beneficiary countries in Africa, and as communities adversely affected by the HIV/AIDS epidemic, we are extremely concerned that the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, PEPFAR's fourth 5-year reauthorization hangs in the balance. More so, we are concerned that the current legislative period expired without successful reauthorization. In the past, the 5-yearly cycle of PEPFAR reauthorization renewal historically received bipartisan support. These renewals had the advantage of allowing conciseness in national HIV programs, providing their stability over time, and enabling sustenance and achievement of more epidemic control gains. Currently, however, PEPFAR reauthorization is under threat, with the danger that it will limit the ability of national programs to plan, but will also in time see the erosion of congressional support. In addition to transforming the HIV epidemic landscape, PEPFAR as an international assistance program has been successful in breaking power dynamics between recipient countries and donors. The two sit together at one table and discuss how programs should look in the recipient country. In essence, from this model, we see peers who are collaborating to a shared end, not a powerful donor on one hand dictating to a helpless recipient on the other. Africans recognize and deeply value this partnership and mutual respect. We as African CSOs do attest that PEPFAR is an intergenerational life-saving program like no other. Through this program, transmission of HIV from mothers to their children is on the verge of being eliminated. Moreover, this is a program that allows children born with HIV to grow to adulthood and to have children of their own. In the past, HIV was a death sentence. Now people can enjoy their full lives thanks to PEPFAR. Without the procurement power of PEPFAR, treatment and prevention would never have been scaled to the magnitude that has reached in African countries. In a big way, PEPFAR has contributed to reducing huge country human resource gaps and to the strengthening of community health systems. Over the years, it has helped address structural barriers among the most HIV-impacted people through programs such as DREAMS for adolescent girls and young women and KPIF for key populations. It has contributed to strengthening countries' supply chains in all its recipient countries. More so, it has ensured that treatment and prevention reach all who need it. PEPFAR's overall accomplishments to date are well documented and staggering. They are not only limited to health and well-being, but also have immense economic and development dimensions. For example, PEPFAR is attributed to contributing to about 42.4% increase in the share of girls and 43.1% increase in the share of boys in school, and in per capita GDP growth of 2.1% and more in the recipient countries. This is in addition to the profound life-saving benefits that are not only limited to HIV/AIDS. Data shows that overall, the recipient countries have a 20% lower all-cause mortality, have a 35% reduction in child mortality, and a 25% reduction in maternal mortality. All these amazing outcomes strongly attributed to PEPFAR. A 5-year PEPFAR clean reauthorization is essential to ensure that the current ambitious global targets to reduce the burden of HIV/AIDS by 2030 are achieved. Ongoing investment by PEPFAR will also continue strengthening fragile health systems, making them more resilient and able to sustain the response not only for AIDS, but also for other likely pandemics. The lack of a 5-year reauthorization for PEPFAR would signal a retreat of American leadership and would be felt as a great loss, not only in Africa, but globally. We implore the US Congress and Senate to direct their efforts to move forward with reauthorizations and recommit to the greatest global public health success story of the last half century. And we will be seeing some other key stakeholders and institutions.
Thank you so much, Annette. We have Ramon's hand up. Please come in, Ramon, again. And then Nyambura after Ramon. Yes, welcome, Ramon. Kindly unmute. Okay. All right, I can see Ramon, you have, okay. Nyambura, kindly come in.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I am Margaret Nyambura. I work for the Kenya Legal and Ethical Issues Network on HIV and AIDS that treats as KELIN. We are in Nairobi, Kenya, and also in Kisumu. Thank you so much for organizing this webinar. So I have happened to sit through other meetings such as this on reauthorization, but I just wanted to point out that earlier this year, just before we got the extension for 1 year, there was a threat from ultra-conservative groups on the kind of work that PEPFAR is doing. And this was the misinformation that PEPFAR funds were going into, abortion and other agenda that was the plan didn't originally set out to do. And we tried to fight this. We had a whole advocacy campaign on it. We even wrote to the National Assembly because we realized that the misinformation letter, which was signed by members of the clergy, members of parliament, and also just well-respected persons in East and Central Africa and as well as Southern Africa, was put out in their capacity as members of parliament. So we wrote to our speaker, the Speaker of the National Assembly in Kenya, and we asked them to set the record straight and to advise the Congress on whether the position taken by the members of parliament in the letter that they did advising against the reauthorization of PEPFAR was the national position. So it turns out that sometimes some of these things usually resolve themselves. Just today, as we are speaking, or actually earlier in the morning in Nairobi, the minister the Ministry for Health, that's the Cabinet Secretary for Health, had a meeting with, you know, the PEPFAR team in Kenya, and our ambassador Meg Whitman was present, and so was the president, His Excellency President William. He was also present. So we have an understanding that the government really benefits from, you know, the support that comes from PEPFAR as far as, you know, prevention and mitigation of the effects of HIV and AIDS go. But on the other hand, there's also the fact that it could be said to be an evangelical government, and therefore may not be, you know, so clear on whether they support reauthorization or not. So I'm just asking whether this letter that we are doing is also going to have any signatures by government officials in at least the countries that the people who did the earlier letter came from. The letter was dated sometimes in June. I can drop it in the chat just after I make my comment. It would really be great to also have, you know, if it's possible for AVAC and other organizers of this event to reach out to the National Assembly, because the response we got from our own National Assembly was that it does not form the national position on how we feel about PEPFAR, but to see such members of parliament write to the Congress. So if we are going to also write to Congress, then is it, oh, thanks Annette, I can see your chat. Is it also possible to reach out to these members of, you know, National Assembly, the members of the clergy from the countries that were represented in that letter, and also ask them, you know, just to weigh in on this letter that we are doing now, even after the 1-year reauthorization? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nyambura. Yes, kindly drop that particular letter also on the chat. It will help quite a lot. And yes, I mean, I think, yes, it's another call for action. Can we also be able to extend the reach out also to our own governments, you know, to the parliaments, as civil societies? So this is basically also one of those particular calls to action that we'll really need to do. Maybe I would basically let also the panelists comment on that. Lawrence, Annette, Joan.
Okay, I can start. Thank you, Muko.
Yes.
I think it is important that we involve as many stakeholders as possible, especially from the civil society fraternity. We have allies that are supporting us. So without necessarily having them to sign on the letter, we can have their moral support. So I'll give an example of UNAIDS. UNAIDS is in support of what we are doing. PEPFAR country offices, country coordinators are in support of what we are doing. So they have their own parallel advocacy efforts to advance this. Probably the Kenyan example is rather different. So I wanted this letter to be strictly for African civil society organizations. But civil society is broad. We have religious leaders, we have other organizations, but in terms of members of parliament, probably I don't think that we can involve them to sign, because they will need further authorizations from their political parties and this and that. So that would then, I think, disturb our cause. So that's my comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comment from?
Yeah, may I come in?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Lawrence. Yes, I agree. I think that one of the many frustrations of how this is played out politically is everyone is talking about the program and not listening to the people who benefit from the program, and not listening to civil society. So we have to understand that the political dynamics of this are domestic US politics. The vast majority of the people who are criticizing PEPFAR right now don't know anything about the program and don't care about the program. They care about US domestic political aims. This is especially true in the Congress. We have many new Congress members who just were not members of Congress when the program was funded and know very little about it. And so that's why they were susceptible to misinformation, because they came in knowing nothing. So I think it's really important to have a focused civil society voice, but we can definitely think about and talk about how government to government communications can happen. I do think that those need to happen through separate channels. But a broad civil society voice from Africa has been missing in this conversation and needs amplification. Over.
Thank you. Now we are short of time. I think we are on top of the hour. We'll just request for some 2 or 3 minutes of yours. So we'll just go around, to the panelists to hear from each, just their last comment on this. But we will also organize another follow-up meeting on this, because we can be able to see. And of course, the other part is maybe we'll invite also Nyambura to come in, and of course also to share exactly your experience, your experience of engaging the religious leaders to refute some of these particular claims, and also engaging the parliament and the government in Kenya to refute some of these particular comments. Yeah, because in any case, some of these people who come up with comments like this sometimes do not know exactly, they do not know the repercussions. But we, as Africans, we know the repercussions. Some of us are much more older than many of you here. We basically were living in our villages, and each and every day we are burying 10 people or 5 people, It was not quite a pleasant scene. So we'll basically go around, and of course hear from our panelists and then close for today. But of course, what happens is, and of course we'll basically invite again and call you in. But we leave you with the letters, and kindly circulate the letters to as many of your networks as possible. At least if at all, let's say we got the US Senate and the US Congress bombarded with about, with about 100 or more than 100 CSOs in each country, it would be really great. So let's basically start with Annette, the way we started. Please, let's hear any last comment from yourself.
Yeah, nothing further to add. I've dropped my email in the chat if anybody has questions or needs clarification on anything. Thank you so much, Muko, and to all the panelists.
Thank you so much, Annette. Let's go to Joan. Kindly unmute Joan. Is Joan in the house? Okay, we can't seem to locate Joan. Joan, are you in? Of course, kindly unmute Joan. Hello. Okay, maybe while we're waiting for Joan to unmute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Welcome.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, my comment is that let us put on a country level effort of civil society organization. Let us also get in touch with implementing partners and our allies. But we also have a platform of GFAN. GFAN Africa is cutting across Africa. Even our colleagues from West Africa, they are in. So if you use that platform very well, we will reach all of us at the national level, at the regional level, and let us use all the regional platform we have. Very effective. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Lawrence, welcome.
Thank you. My last word is that we reach out to as many CSOs as possible, big ones, small ones, at community level. I think if we have as many signatures, it will send a big voice and a loud voice. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Owiti has raised his hand before we go to Tumaini. Peter?
Yes, thank you very much. My organization had already sent the letter, but I just wanted to add that there is need to mention the fact that the PEPFAR contribution in the diseases, the three diseases, is complementing global funds. And so if PEPFAR does not provide for some funding, then the global fund will be not be very effective in most countries. Because when we were planning for the year 2024-2027 global fund, we included the fund from the of PEPFAR as a complementary budget. They are complementary activities that the two bodies were doing. So we don't know how that will happen because we can't go back to rebudget. Thank you.
Yeah, that is another scary situation you have shared there, Peter. But in any case, anyhow, we'll basically continue influencing, and of course, we'll continue organizing. So let's go to Tumaini.
Yeah, thank you so much. And prior to this, last comment from Lawrence, he spoke on my behalf because Nyambura has brought in very, important issue, but let us all here understand that the government is on one side and the civil society is on the other side. And these efforts that we are taking here is on the CSO's perspective. So as the government will do what they can do, and we as civil society, we have to do what we can do. The best I can say is that let us try as much as we can, get as much as we can the signing of the civil society from all over the continent so that we voice out our concern. With regard to, to the reach, EANNASO is available. And for anyone who is, interested to work with EANNASO, you are warmly welcome, and we are there for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and we thank you. We thank everyone for making to this particular webinar. We'll be getting in touch. Yes, we'll also be sending the letter, and of course also the presentation, the PowerPoint presentation to all who registered. And thank you for saying extra time. Thank you so much, and we'll basically be continuing to organize and continue organizing also in your own countries. Thank you.
Thank you, and bye.